How goes it, folks? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review Paramore's debut album, All We Know Is Falling. Now, this came out in 2005, but really, this is kind of almost like an indie album in a lot of ways. I mean, 17 years later, this album only went gold compared to Paramore's Riot album from 2007, which went like multi-platinum and had some big hit singles on there like Misery Business. But this is kind of more of a word of mouth project, and it was kind of originally they probably wouldn't have been as large if they had kept dropping albums like this. Now, this is definitely an excellent album, and I almost want to say I like this album more than I like Riot. Now, Riot is pretty good. I don't remember what I scored that, but I did like the singles quite a bit on Riot. But this is a pretty cohesive album, and from what Wikipedia says about it, it's a scene music classic. So I just would have to kind of say that that's pretty awesome to kind of get that. I thought that Haley Williams was kind of more emo, but it's interesting that the scene music group kind of picked up on that too. So it's kind of, I like the concept behind that. Now, originally Haley Williams was supposed to be like a solo singer, but she didn't want to wind up. She didn't see herself as like the next Madonna, so she did form the band Paramore, put this album together, and the demos that she recorded were not the label was not trying to mess with those. So we got the Paramore album, and it's kind of like I said, this is a word of mouth project, so none of the singles are really as viral as Misery Business or some of their later singles like Decode and that type stuff. So I would have to kind of say that this is, I mean, it's not quite indie, but it's just kind of very lambent, kind of softer rock, not so much soft in terms of like the approach, but just kind of in terms of like the success rate and the promotion behind it, which is interesting enough, but this is pretty quality. I mean, this is about as underground and as like word of mouth as it's going to get in terms of like rock music that still makes shockwaves and that type of stuff. So I definitely appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that. Definitely a Backstreets kind of project and a low key kind of project in a lot of ways. So that would, of course, be right at home here on Acid Root. So I just would have to say so. There were three singles from this project, and they kind of came and went, obviously because of the more mellow factor towards it. But these are pretty good singles. I definitely feel like Pressure is like a minor bubbler version of Misery Business. I think Pressure being the first single. This one just reminded me of like backyard music in like the late summer. This whole album kind of gives off to me. I mean, it's interesting that this album came out in like late July of 2005, because most of the songs on here kind of have like the pitch to me as far as something you'd listen to in late August, September, and October. That's where I saw most of this album being listened to in terms of the production and the instrumentation that I got from it. But this is kind of like a midsummer kind of tempo type song. Has a pretty like factory chorus. I would have to say it's a stock Paramore song, and it's their debut single, so it's credit to them for having a hit single just right off the bat and being able to. This is probably the most popular song off the project in terms of what Spotify had to say about it, and it is a pretty popular song. Like I said, not as massive as like Misery Business or Hallelujah or some of those songs off of Riot, but it is a pretty quality song, and it is one that I would see for like backyard session, just kind of like a, just 80 degrees, 75-degree weather type night, something like that, just late August, September, something in that valve, and just kind of kick back with it and just have a few beers in your backyard type stuff. Um, Emergency is kind of a lot more. This one felt like more of like an autumn type song. I definitely kind of got that pitch. It was just kind of a moody, kind of spooky kind of feeling type song, and maybe not wholesomely spooky, but just kind of grim almost. Just kind of the way that that production kind of went. It's a little bit more like moody than Pressure kind of is. I definitely like the concept behind it. And of course, this being their second single that they dropped is kind of interesting to get the pitch as to how it's going to go. Like, there's another quality hook on here, would have to say. I mean, these are like Haley Williams knows how to make these pretty catchy choruses and stuff, just because a lot of these, the thing about Haley Williams is the fact that she charts despite the fact that like it's like it's not alternative. So she's kind of alternative, but the fact of the matter is that these songs chart and they kind of get some expression towards that. I feel like she's definitely one of the ones that was kind of responsible for kind of getting alternative more into the forefront, and kind of getting alternative more into the forefront and kind of having more of like mainstream alternative, if that makes sense. It's just kind of mainstream alternative, but these two songs were quality enough to kind of do that. But I definitely saw this as like not so much like a July, August, September type song, but like a late September, October, mid October type feel towards it. It's kind of got that kind of grim and slightly moody, or moody and slightly grim kind of feel towards it. But I did like that one. Just felt like a fall song. And then All We Know is kind of like a barbecue, backyard barbecue picnic kind of type feel. This one kind of has more of like a summer feel towards it, but it just didn't chart as high. But I did like the song. It just kind of felt like a miniature kind of party-esque type feel. It wasn't a club song, wasn't a night venue song, but it just kind of came off as like an outdoor kind of food barbecue something like luncheon type atmosphere towards it, just kind of in an alternative and emo sense. That's a nice one. There's only 10 songs on here, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 8 songs out of 10 that I recommend. There's actually 7 songs I recommend. One song's an almost song, but I do kind of like most of these. There's only really 2 songs I didn't enjoy on this project. So the 8 songs would be Pressure, Emergency, All We Know, and those are the singles. Whoa, Never Let This Go, Here We Go Again, and Brighter. And then the almost song was the last song on the album, My Heart. So to kind of talk about some of these, I really felt like Brighter, Never Let This Go, and My Heart are kind of more of those kind of more kind of grim and kind of moodier type songs that just kind of feel like something you'd listen to in like the early fall, like September, October, that type stuff. Really kind of came off to me as like the just got off work, kind of hanging out in the backyard, just kind of orange trees, red trees, purple trees type stuff. This kind of more grim type feeling, kind of more like zip up jacket type weather, but not quite hoodie weather and coat weather type stuff. I really felt like some of those were good. Emergency is kind of like that too. Woe is a nice one. Woe kind of reminded me of All We Know and Pressure. This one's kind of more rock oriented, and I definitely like the hook on Woe. That was just a real kind of like there are some night venue bops on here that I was surprised by, but I did kind of feel like Woe. I did kind of feel like Woe was kind of like a catchy one that probably could have been a single almost, and I definitely see it as like a nice kind of night venue bop, kind of similar to All We Know and Pressure. Here We Go Again is another one that I felt like could have been at like a night venue. This is definitely kind of like a karaoke night venue type song, something at like a pub, someplace where you're going to hear music and kind of have like lager and that type stuff. Some of those type moments is something with like the mugs and the beer mugs and that type stuff, and just cool kind of open mic type stuff, those type nights. It just felt like a real nightlife type song. Now, I think Hayley Williams was not 21 in 2005. I'm not really sure. I need to check and see how old she is, but I kind of think she was a minor back around this times, but I still think getting some of these night venue songs is still pretty nice. It's not quite to the degree of like what it would be later, but I do think there's enough in here. I definitely feel like All We Know, Pressure, Here We Go Again, and Whoa are kind of some of the more night venue and kind of karaoke bar and pub type songs. And then there's like some kind of more backyard type vibes with Never Let This Go, Brighter, My Heart, and like Emergency. So it's kind of, so you get kind of half and half about this project. But the reason why My Heart is kind of an almost song, I don't know, it's kind of a depressed kind of song. I mean, this one's this one's a lot moodier than the rest of the project, where this one really the emo pitch is turned up quite a bit, and it just feels like a real depressed kind of song, more so than I would have thought for it to have been. I mean, it's not like it's a heart wrenching kind of tear at your heart kind of song, but it just is kind of in a more grim kind of like this kind of in a funk type song. It's kind of, hey, I'm kind of depressed today, I'm just not feeling it today type vibes. It's interesting to kind of get that, but I can see myself listening to it, but I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of say that that's not an almost song, because I do like it. I mean, because I do like the moody songs and that type of stuff. I was just gonna say it was an almost song just because it's kind of moody, and I don't know the degree is it how grim I feel in accompaniment with Hayley Williams on the song. But it is, I do like those kind of pitches, so I do think I can say it's an almost song, but then kind of not. I can see myself listening to it. It's kind of, I think it grows on me quicker than, I think I like the song more than I did, 40 minutes ago when I was listening to it for the review and such. That's just kind of the concept. So I do like that one. So that's 8. So the 2 songs I didn't enjoy, I kind of felt like Franklin was a little bit more triumphant than I would have liked. I definitely kind of felt like I just didn't. That one just kind of felt a lot more, way more upbeat than the rest of the album kind of was. That was just kind of a spiffy one that I wasn't expecting and didn't really sit with the rest of the mood of the album. And then Conspiracy was just kind of, I didn't like the production on this one. It just was kind of trying to do the stuff that Whoa and like Pressure and like All We Know is what we're doing, but it didn't quite pull it off as well as those 3 songs. I kind of, that would have been a 4th song. I would have said that could have been in the more rock sense and more night venue sense, but I didn't. I couldn't get into that one enough. So, but me liking 8 songs out of 10, I'm gonna go ahead and give this album a 9 out of 10. I know I could give it an 8 out of 10, but me liking basically 4/5 of this album out of 10 songs, me liking 8, I definitely feel like that's pretty high grade. I mean, the fact that there's only 2 songs on the whole album that I didn't enjoy, that's damn near the whole project. That's basically like the whole thing. I mean, I could give it a 10 just because there's that many, but I still feel like, 10 songs not liking 2 is not quite perfect, but it's just in the valve of that. I could give it a 9, I could give it a 9.25. I guess I could give it a 9.25 just to say the exceptional quality behind it. But I just feel like a 9.25 is just kind of within that department. I guess it just comes down to, as far as critique as to why I didn't get a higher score than 9.25, is just because I like the kind of low key vibe about it, but I would have liked this album to have gotten more kind of like notoriety just because it is a good project. I just feel like they even said that that was their whole aim, was to not cram the promotion of this project down people's throats. And I kind of think I did like the concept of word of mouth and them kind of finding out on it on its own. But then in some cases, I kind of like the concept of knowing some of the hit songs and being able to kind of figure it out and just kind of see just like the popular songs so you don't have to do so much pick and choose yourself and that type of stuff. It's just, look, I don't know. I like customs sometimes, but sometimes I don't like customs. That's just kind of the concept. So I feel like I like the approach somewhat that they did with this word of mouth type angle, but I also like having the promotion and knowing the stuff. So it's just kind of, a 9.25 is really good. I'm talking like I'm giving this like a 5 or something. I'm not. 9.25 out of 10. It's really excellent. This is a scene music classic. I can definitely see that. This overall quality, and I might like this more than I liked Riot. I mean, I just feel like Riot had the more massive singles, but this is kind of very cohesive project. So that's kind of the thing. The social score, I'm going to give like a 6.75 out of 10 just because it does have some social vibes about it on here, but some of the moodiness, or it does have a lot of social vibes on here, but it's not quite packed to the gills in terms of stepping out type moments. There's some in here and there kind of for that. Like most of the singles kind of have that social vibe about it, but it's not like a full blown shot in the arm in terms of like the most raucous kind of night and weekend type party number that you would expect. So it has some of it, but it's just not an all night, all day and tomorrow kind of album. It's not to say it's bad, but I just kind of look after it in terms of like the party sort and socializing, having a real crazy kind of night. It just doesn't have like the whole engine for that. And I think that's kind of the concept, but it is good. So just take the 9.25 score and say that it's quality, but in terms of with your friends, it's a little bit slighter than that, but not by much. So that's, can this record be topped? I'd say for the most part, probably not. This is an exceptional project, and I definitely like the approach behind it. In terms of the future, well, actually, Paramore are dropping an album tomorrow, or today. Really, there's an album coming out in February 2023 by Paramore. So it's pretty cool that I do want to check that project out eventually, but I did like this project, and here it's kind of my extra support towards them for having such an excellent debut album. So that's kind of the thing there.